The wind spoke in broken tongues across the prairie, dry and restless, as if mourning something it could no longer name. The ranch stretched before him like a grave, fences split, cattle ribs showing through hide, the house half swallowed by dust. He sat his horse without moving for a long time, a dark figure against the amber hush of evening, hat low, shoulders heavy. Somewhere behind those weary eyes, a younger man might have remembered what this place used to mean. Now it was bone and silence, and a mortgage 3 weeks from swallowing the last of it. He swung down stiffly, boots sinking in dirt like it resisted him. He checked the troughs, half full, warm with algae. He checked the wire, snapped in 2 places. Everything took longer these days. His body had its own war to fight, old wounds wrapped in tendon and gristle, reminders from battles no one celebrated. He lit a lantern on the porch as dusk fell, a weak halo of gold in a world fast forgetting light. That night he didn't eat, just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the rifle above the mantel and the hollow space beside him where no one had slept in years. By morning, he was riding to town with a kind of urgency that didn't show on his face, only in the tightness of his jaw. He needed something, though he wouldn't name it. Supplies, perhaps. A new hand, maybe. Something to keep the wolves of debt a little farther from the door. The trading post stank of sweat, smoke, and horses. Men bartered loudly over sacks of grain and rifle bolts, spitting tobacco onto the wood floor like punctuation. He walked past them all, boots echoing with a slow, deliberate rhythm. He wasn't a man who liked crowds. They made him feel like a bruise being pressed. And then he saw her. Behind rusted bars, near the back where the shadows were thickest, a girl sat on her haunches like an animal too tired to stand. Her clothes were torn, her feet bare. Dust clung to her like skin. Her hair fell in wild knots across her face, but her eyes, those were clear. Sharp. Too sharp. Not the eyes of someone broken. A man in a bowler hat leaned against the post, chewing a toothpick. "She's no good," he said before the rancher could speak. "Ran off from 2 ranches, bit the marshal once. Ain't speakin' neither. Some say she's not right in the head." The rancher said nothing, just looked. "She's not for sale," the man added. "Not proper sale anyway. We call her too wild. Not worth the feed." He looked back at her. She stared at him like she could gut him if she wanted to. And maybe she could. But beneath all that defiance, something flickered. Not fear. Not quite hope. Something older. Something that recognized pain and chose not to flinch. "How much?" he asked. The man scoffed. "You serious?" He pulled a folded wad of bills from his coat. Not much left after that. Not enough to pay off the feed store or fix the roof. But maybe enough for this one bet. When the deal was done, she didn't move. Just stood slowly, as if unsure whether this was another game. He offered his hand. She didn't take it. He didn't expect her to. They rode out of town without a word. The townsfolk watched them go, whispers trailing like smoke. She rode behind him on a roan mare, too thin for 2, yet silent. She held the saddle without holding him, kept her eyes on the horizon. When they stopped for water, she refused the canteen until he turned his back. When they reached the ranch, she dismounted before the horse had even stopped, vanishing into the barn like mist. He didn't stop her, just let her choose her place. That night, he set out cornbread and beans on the back porch near the barn. In the morning, the plate was scraped clean and gone. The saddle he'd left out to be cleaned had been scrubbed nearly raw, the leather oiled better than he would have done himself. A knife was left beside it, his own missing for weeks. She didn't sleep in the house, didn't speak, but she began moving like a creature testing the edge of its cage, watching him from the eaves, following at a distance when he fixed the troughs, picking burrs from the horse's manes when she thought no one saw. He never asked her name, didn't offer his. There was something sacred in that silence, like 2 ghosts deciding whether to share a grave. On the 3rd day, a storm rolled in, black clouds bruising the sky, wind howling low and mean. He worked fast, tying down the shutters, bringing the cattle closer. He looked for her once, nothing in the barn, nothing in the loft. He told himself not to worry. Then the thunder cracked like a god, breaking his teeth on stone. He found her in the open field, barefoot in the grass, head tilted toward the sky. Rain had begun to fall, light at first, then heavy, until her hair clung to her shoulders and her dress clung to her ribs. She didn't flinch when lightning split the clouds, close enough to feel the heat. He didn't call out, just stood there, watching this wild thing refuse to be tamed. When she turned to him, rain carving her face into something almost regal, he saw it again, that flicker. Recognition. Not trust, not yet. But something just as dangerous. They didn't speak, just walked back together through the wet, two shadows cut from the same dusk. Later that night, as the storm softened into steady rain, he set another plate of food on the porch. It was gone by morning. The saddle was polished again. A second knife had gone missing, but his tools were sharpened, his boots cleaned of mud. And, in the barn, up in the loft, a shape lay still beneath the hay, breathing deep. The ranch was still dying. The sky still threatened. But something unnamed had entered that broken land. A presence, sharp as flint and just as ready to cut. He didn't know what she was. Not yet. But he'd bought a girl labeled too wild for any man, and found someone who didn't need saving. Only space enough to ride beside him. And that, somehow, was more terrifying than being alone. Before dawn touched the sky, he heard the thud of hooves, steady, confident, not panicked. He rose from bed, lit by the dull blue of coming day, and stepped outside with his rifle resting lazy across his shoulder. The air was cool, clean from last night's storm, and the land smelled of wet earth and horses. She was in the pasture, bareback on his fastest Mustang. The animal should have bucked her clean into the dirt. No saddle, no bridle, just a thin rope looped around its neck. But the mare moved like it had always known her. The girl's legs pressed gently, guiding, her back straight as a lance, hair streaming behind like a dark flag in the morning wind. She wasn't riding the horse. She was part of it, the way a hawk rides thermals, the way the land holds the memory of fire. He leaned against the fence post and watched. When she finished, she slid down without flare. The horse trotted back toward the trough, sweat glistening along its haunches. She said nothing to him, just walked past, feet bare, dress clinging damply from the night before. Her eyes met his only once, a glance like flint striking stone. He didn't stop her, just said, "Next time, saddle her." She paused. A beat passed. Then she kept walking. By mid-morning, she was in the corral, repairing a broken rail. No one asked her to. He passed her a hammer. She took it without thanks. They worked in tandem, silent, precise. The rhythm of wood and nail filled the dry air, and the prairie wind threaded through it like breath. In the days that followed, something unspoken settled between them. She didn't sleep in the loft anymore. Instead, she strung a canvas tarp between two trees near the barn and kept a fire burning low through the night. He left food. She left the plates cleaned. Once, he found his mother's old book of pressed flowers on the porch steps. She'd repaired the binding with rawhide cord. Still, she never told him her name. He didn't press. He'd known men who'd been pressed too hard, and they broke in ways that never healed right. They worked the land together. She mended fence wire with careful hands, milked the cow that kicked like hell, but didn't so much as twitch when she touched it, tamed a skittish colt in 2 days without raising her voice. There was no softness in her, but there was kindness of a sort, sharp-edged, earned. When he took sick for 2 days, just enough fever to keep him down, he woke to find water by the bed, coals stoked in the stove, the chores already done. No sign of her, but her presence lingered like the smell of saddle soap and rain. He didn't say, "Thank you." She wouldn't have. They rode the range together after that, side by side, but never close. He watched how she watched, always scanning the horizon, eyes narrowing when wind changed, when birds scattered without cause. She trusted nothing, not even quiet. Once, in the tall grass near the eastern ridge, she stiffened, hand on the hilt of her knife. He followed her gaze. 2 riders. Far off, moving slow, but wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. Men who rode like they owned the road. She said nothing. just turned her horse and headed back, calm as still water. But he noticed how she rode faster than usual. That night, she slept with her back to the barn wall, blade tucked against her thigh. He asked the general store owner in town about the riders. Could be drifters, the man said, weighing nails on a scale. Or maybe bounty hunters. Heard someone posted a reward up north, looking for a half-wild girl with dark eyes and a sharp tongue. Seems she ran off from a government wagon. One with bars on the windows. The rancher didn't answer. Just nodded, tipped his hat, and left without the nails. Back at the ranch, she was waiting at the edge of the field, sitting cross-legged on a fence post like a crow. She watched him ride in. Didn't move. He approached slow. "You know, Em?" She didn't reply. Just spit into the dirt and hopped down. That night, they ate in silence on the porch. He offered her a second plate. She took it. When the sky bruised to violet and the stars blinked on one by one, he asked, "You expecting trouble?" She wiped her mouth on her sleeve. "Always." He didn't ask anything more. Didn't need to. The fire crackled. The land held its breath. The next afternoon, one of the riders came close enough to see. The girl saw him first. She was up on the ridge, checking for coyotes, when she spotted the glint of sunlight on metal far down the trail. She didn't shout, didn't run, just mounted and rode hard toward the house. He met her halfway. She pointed with her chin. "One. Scout hunt." He squinted, nodded. "Rifles in the barn loft." "I already took it." She was calm. Too calm. The rider came within shouting distance, stopped, lifted a hand in mock greeting. He was young, face too smooth for the dust he carried, revolver riding low and loose on his hip. "Evenin'," he called out. "Heard you might be shelterin'. Someone belongs to others." The rancher stood in front of her, legs apart, arms folded. "You heard wrong. She's got a price on her," the man said, smiling with too many teeth. "High one. Trouble follows her like buzzards." The girl stepped out from behind him, rifle held loose, but ready. "You got one chance," she said. "Right away." The man smirked. "That's supposed to scare me?" She aimed. The wind held still. And then she fired. The hat on his head jumped clean off, spinning once before landing in the dust. The man flinched, blinked, then backed his horse a step. Then another. "You fire again," he said, voice shaking now. "I won't be the only one riding in next time." She lowered the rifle. "Then bring more," she said. "I've got bullets." He turned and rode away fast. The silence after was sharp. The rancher looked at her. She looked back. "Hell of a shot," he muttered. She said nothing, but her lip curled slightly, not quite a smile. Later that night, he found her sharpening her blade by lantern light. He sat across from her, rolling a cigarette with fingers that had seen too much war. The wind was up again, dry, restless. "You stayin'?" he asked. She glanced up, eyes like smoke and flint. "Ain't leavin'?" He nodded once. "Then we've got work to do." The air felt charged, like something was coming. Not just riders, not just blood, something deeper. Old debts, old ghosts. And neither of them would be able to outrun it. Not anymore. The bounty hunter never saw the trap until it snapped shut around his leg. His scream cut through the late afternoon quiet like a razor cross-eyed. The rancher heard it from the edge of the north field and didn't rush. He walked the distance slow, with purpose, rifle cradled in his arms, the weight of his footsteps pressing into the dirt like punctuation. By the time he arrived, the man was on his back, cursing through gritted teeth, a rusted iron jaw clamped around his calf. Blood soaked into the dry grass beneath him, and his horse had bolted down the ravine. His revolver lay just out of reach. She was already there, crouched beside him, blade in her hand, not to strike, just to remind. Her face gave nothing away. Not fear, not anger, just silence honed to a fine edge. The rancher stared down at the intruder, recognizing him as one of the riders from a ridge, just younger up close, almost boyish behind the grime and blood. But there was something in his eyes that didn't belong to a child, something mean, something that had seen women tied to posts and thought it justice. "You stepped where you shouldn't," the rancher said. The bounty hunter spat. She ain't yours. Government wants her. Folks up north too. She ain't anyone's, the rancher replied. The man smirked even through the pain. She's war spawn. Father was cavalry, mother was Comanche. That make her yours? Or everyone's problem? The girl flinched. Not much, but enough. The blade in her hand trembled for half a breath before steadying again. The rancher crouched beside the man, took his revolver, and tossed it into the bushes. Leave the name of my land off your tongue, he said. You got one chance. I ain't walking out of here with this leg. Then crawl. He gave the man a canteen, wrapped a piece of cloth around his leg, and let him go. Watched him drag himself toward the distant line of trees, cursing until his voice broke. That night, the girl didn't eat. Sat by the fire sharpening her knife, face lit in flickers, jaw clenched tight. He brought her coffee, left it by the log. She didn't look at him, but when he turned to go, she spoke. You knew. He stopped. Knew what? What I was. I didn't know anything, he said. I just saw you. She took a long breath, like each word came with weight. I was born in a place that doesn't exist anymore. My mother's people were burned out while the army called it pacification. My father wore a blue coat and said he could make me civilized. He raised me on split rules, speak English, forget blood, obey. The wind rustled the trees, carrying ashes from somewhere long dead. I ran when they killed my mother, she said. They called it an accident. Said she shouldn't have run either. The rancher stood still. He knew the kind of pain she carried. The kind that doesn't scream. It settles inside, like a nail rusting in bone. I kept running, she whispered. Men kept chasing. Not 'cause they missed me. 'Cause they wanted to say they owned me. He stepped closer, slowly, careful not to make her feel cornered. They don't anymore, he said. She nodded, but her eyes didn't soften. He thought then about his own past, the orders he followed, the men he killed for flags that didn't mean much anymore. He remembered torching homesteads under moonlight and telling himself it was war, not murder. It all came back in the girl's silence, in the shadows under her eyes. The next morning, she was gone. Her tarp, her fire ring, even the old boots she'd patched up vanished. He found only a single feather on the fence post, dark and iridescent. Not a goodbye. A warning. Maybe both. He didn't chase her. Just fed the animals and fixed the roof like he'd planned. Let the days pass in silence, though they sat heavier now. At night, he left the porch light burning like a signal. 5 days later, he found her tracks near the riverbed. Hoof prints. Bare footprints too. Signs of a kill, a rabbit skinned and eaten clean. She was alive. She returned on the 6th day, just before dusk. She rode a different horse. Younger. Wild-eyed. Still half wild itself, but obedient to her touch. She dismounted without a word and handed him the reins. Found this in the canyon, she said. Might pull a plow. He took the reins. Nodded. Good eye. They stood in the yard for a long moment, both watching the sky bleed into red and gold. Then she said, Fence out east is sagging. He looked at her, saw something new behind the hard edges. Not softness, exactly. Just willingness. A rope frayed at one end, still strong enough to hold if you trusted it. I'll get the tools, he said. They worked until dark, shoulders brushing in the dusk. That night, a child rode out from town. Small thing, face too pale, breath coming in hard bursts. They're coming, he panted. The men she shot at. They've got others now. Real mean ones. Said they'll burn your place to the ground if she don't come out. The rancher offered him water. Let him rest. Then sent him back with a message. You tell them the land remembers fire. We're not afraid of ashes. When the boy had gone, the girl stood beside him on the porch, arms crossed, face unreadable. You want me to leave? He looked out over the fields. The land he'd buried his wife in. The land he'd bled for. The land he'd nearly let die. No, he said. I want you to help me fight for it. She didn't smile, but she straightened. Set her shoulders like armor. Then I stay. And with that, she disappeared into the barn. When she came back, she carried his wife's old rifle. Cleaned. Oiled. Ready. He didn't ask how she found it. They didn't speak the rest of the night. They didn't need to. Something was coming. Yes. But this time, they'd be ready. The night before the riders came, the sky held its breath. No wind, no stars, just a heavy darkness pressing down like judgment. In the barn, she cleaned the rifle with ritual care, every motion deliberate, quiet. He sat nearby, sorting cartridges, fingers working without pause, though his eyes strayed to her every so often. It wasn't worry. It was something older, an understanding forged through days of silence, fire, and blood. They had built their stand from scratch. Traps dug into the soft earth along the main path, sharpened stakes hidden under brush, lines of dry twigs meant to snap and sing out when touched. The girl had fashioned a perimeter of empty bottles on the fence posts, her own crude warning system. The land itself became their ally, every dip and shadow marked, every loose board reinforced. The ranch had once been a place of decay. Now it bristled like a wounded animal refusing to die quietly. She wore leather at the wrists and a red cloth tied around her braid. Not war paint, exactly, but close. He caught the flicker of her eyes when she caught him watching. "You scared?" she asked, voice low. "No," he said, "but I've buried men for less than what they're bringing." She nodded once and handed him the rifle. He checked the sights, passed it back. They didn't speak again until the dogs started barking. The first bottle shattered just past midnight. Then came the distant clatter of hooves, deliberate and slow, like a hunter walking into another man's home. The girl crouched by the window, rifle steady against the sill. He stood near the door, shotgun in hand, heart beating with a rhythm he hadn't felt since his last war. Torchlight flickered between the trees. For men rode into view, all leather and dust, their faces half-shadowed under wide brims. Behind them came another three on foot. One held a lasso, another a long-barreled carbine. The lead rider called out, voice sharp and theatrical. "You know why we're here." The rancher stepped out onto the porch, slowly, like a man unafraid of dying, only tired of explaining why he chose not to. His voice didn't rise, didn't waver. "She's not yours. She's government property," the man called back. "She ran from a train full of filth. Now she gets hauled back to hang with him. Law says so." The girl stepped beside the rancher, rifle in hand. Her eyes found the speaker and didn't blink. "Law don't mean much out here," she said. "Not when it's bought with blood." For a second, no one moved. Then one of the riders raised his rifle. The shot cracked through the night like a whip. She dropped to one knee, aimed, and returned fire. The rider tumbled backward, his horse shrieking as it bolted. The yard exploded into chaos, gunfire, curses, sparks leaping from the porch rail as wood splintered around them. The rancher fired once, twice, dropped a man behind the well. She moved like fire, darting between cover, her shots clean and cruel. They fought not with hope, but with decision. Each shot a choice, each breath a rebellion. He felt the round hit his side before he heard the shot. It burned like hot iron, and he staggered, one hand going to the wound, warm blood seeping through his fingers. He fell, behind the water trough, vision swimming. She saw him fall. A scream tried to escape her throat, but she swallowed it. Ran to him under a hail of lead, bullets striking the dirt like rain. She dragged him behind the old plow, breath sharp, trembling. "You stay with me," she hissed, pressing her palm to the wound. He smiled, teeth bloodied. "Told you they come." She knelt beside him, fury making her eyes shine. "You're not dying. Not tonight." He reached up, touched the red cloth in her braid. "You ride like her," he whispered. "My wife. She would have liked you." She kissed his forehead, quick and fierce, like sealing a promise. Then she stood. The rifle was empty. She grabbed the carbine from his side, eyes scanning the shadows. 3 men left now. 2 circling toward the barn. 1 crouched by the fence, reloading. She moved fast. Shot the first in the shoulder, then in the chest when he turned. The second fired and missed. She didn't. The last man saw her coming and ran for his horse. She aimed carefully, fired. He slumped over the saddle, sliding to the ground like loose cloth. And just like that, it was done. The fire from a kick lantern had caught the edge of the corral, painting the night in orange and smoke. The girl stumbled through it, rifle hanging from her shoulder, body shaking. She found him still breathing, barely. "You're gonna live," she whispered, as if daring him not to. In the pale hours before dawn, she stitched the wound closed by lamplight. Her hands shook, but her needle didn't. He drifted in and out of sleep, mumbling names long dead, one of them hers, but only in dreams. Days passed. He recovered slow, but sure. She tended him without ceremony, but with care, mornings bringing him broth, evenings checking his bandages, always with her knife at her belt and her eyes on the horizon. The riders never came back. The sheriff visited once, heard their story, saw the blood-soaked ground, and chose silence over justice. Perhaps he knew the war they'd survived. Perhaps he understood this was the kind of place where law bent like dry willow. In the weeks that followed, grass grew again in the pasture. The cattle stopped flinching at shadows. A colt was born in the north barn. The ranch, against all odds, began to breathe again. One morning, he saddled the roan and found her already waiting by the gate, her new horse dancing under her touch. She looked at him, sun at her back, the red cloth still in her braid. "You ready?" she asked. He nodded. "Only if you ride beside me." She didn't smile, but she rode, and the prairie opened before them like a story finally ready to be told.